Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews, and welcome to another episode in my Animorphs series, where I dissect, discuss, and gently disparage, all with love, all of the books in the Animorphs series, unless they're Megamorphs books or any of the spin-offs. To date, we are on Animorphs 18, The Decision, which, based on the cover, is probably an Axe book, which has me excited because I don't think we've had an Axe book for some time. What will Axe do with his new mouth now? Wait. Because this is an Axe book, we open with a non-traditional intro, which means we can jump right in. The three things we learn from this intro: that an incident that occurs to Axe has rewritten the rules of zero-space mass extrusion during morphing. No way I was going to remember that one. Number 2, that there are traitors among the Andalites. And number 3, something is going to happen on Lyra, which I could explain to you the background of that, but you can just go and watch the other videos and work out what Lyra is. But this is called the Ascalin incident. But this book does have one traditional opening moment. We begin at the mall. Axe has fallen prey to the worms of capitalism, and he's looking for a job that will give him money in order to buy cinnamon buns. The manager says Axe is clearly too young to have a job working here, but if he clears some tables, she'll give him some food. Alas, Axe takes clear the tables to mean eat all the things on the tables, to the point where he is eating the cinnamon buns of some people who haven't actually started eating yet. The manager, to her credit, says if he's all that hungry, he can have a plate of stale cinnamon buns that are just about to be thrown away. And that's where Marco picks up the story, because he happened to be in the mall watching a large crowd and some paramedics witness a boy eat an entire pan of cinnamon buns. I was not aware of the precise specifications for human stomachs, I explained. It seems that there is some sort of limit on the quantity that may be consumed. Passing that limit caused an unpleasant sensation in the stomach area. It also caused me to become dizzy. I relate to Axe so hard sometimes. Eyes bigger than stomach is a feeling that I know all too well. Marco is relaying this story while the gang wait in the woods for the arrival of Eric, the Chi, the android. Again, past videos. Eric shows up and fills them in on something that just isn't making sense. Here's the sitch. The second-ranking guy in the Secret Service, a man named Hewlett Aldershot III, is in hospital in a coma. He was hit by a car walking across the street. We don't know why he's here in this area, but we do know this: no one even knows he's in the hospital. The hospital's filled with human controllers, and what's weirder is the guy who hit him with the car is Yerke Vice Principal Chapman. As ever, reconnaissance comes first, so that means morphing to seagull and sort of hanging around outside the guy's hospital room to see what happens. Who should turn up but Visser Three in his human morph? A Visser Three arrival very early in the story. The mall, the woods, Visser Three. If I had time to actually set up the Animorphs drinking game, you would be hammered by page 12. In the hospital room, they see Visser Three morph from human back to Andalite, proving that the hospital is a Yerk hotspot. It would seem there is an issue with the Yerk plan. If Hewlett Aldershot is so injured that he cannot walk or move around, then he's not much use to the Yerks as a controller. So Visser Three does the only thing he can think of in the moment. If the guy's no good to be a host, he'll have to be a morph. However, he does still want this human repaired, on the off chance that they can get better, which he does shout to the doctors in what I assume is his best evil villain voice. Then one stalk eye turned to stare directly at me. The second stalk eye followed, and I began to have a very bad feeling. Obviously, the thing to do here is to take a minute to behave not like humans spying on a situation, but like regular seagulls. But before they have a chance to do that, the window explodes and out comes Visser Three in the form of a six-winged carpet bird. Impossible, I cried in total shock. The carpet bird only lives in one place in the universe, the Andalite homeworld. How in the heck did Visser Three get that DNA? Axe outmaneuvers Visser Three by zooming through the golden arches of a McDonald's sign, but still the chase is on. Landing on the roof of the McDonald's out of sight of the humans, Axe demorphs. He'll be more powerful as an Andalite than as a seagull, I think that's probably clear. I looked into the eyes of the abomination, and there I saw evil, and then I saw something that made my heart leap, because I also saw fear. The others land and they debate demorphing to human and then morphing into their powerful morphs, but they can only do that if they're 100% sure that Visser Three won't walk away, because he really can't know that they are humans. But given that some humans saw a six-winged bird land on the roof of the McDonald's, now is probably not the best time for a fight to the death. Axe swings with his tail blade but misses, and Visser Three leaps off the roof of the building into a dumpster where he then morphs back to human. There's nothing they can do. Next comes a sentence that I hope to use in my daily life. That night, I ran across the far pastures of Cassie's ranch and tried to figure out my emotions. Be right back. Running through the fields, regulating my emotions. The clouds overhead hid the moon and the stars. This made me sad. I like to find the home star at night. It's become something of an unofficial ritual, something I do for myself, to remind myself that there is a place for me in the galaxy. I may not be there, but the place does exist. I am unprepared for this level of emotions. Time for some late night therapy with Tobias, something something that pretty much every single character in this series has benefited from at some point or another. But even with Tobias's sage words, there's still a lot of questions as to how Visser Three got the Carpet Bird DNA. Either by going there directly or having a spy, the Yeerks have infiltrated Axe's home. Later in the barn, Axe reflects on the merits of the human race. I mean, it largely boils down to humans invented cinnamon buns, but the thought is there. Marco figures out that the reason Visser Three morphed into an Andalite bird over all the morphs that he has is that he was sending a message to this group who he still believes to be Andalites. Basically, he was messing them about. What to do about this? And what to do about our Secret Service man? It's a fair bet that the Yeerks want him for, you know, controlling the Secret Services, but also stopping anyone telling the higher-ups about the alien invasion. But if he did do that, what if the Animorphs morphed into the Secret Service agent? Now, if you'll remember from the previous books, the Animorphs aren't super keen on morphing people, largely because they can't get their consent. They definitely can't get the consent from Mr. Hewlett, who is unconscious, and also they probably can't even get close to him because he's in a hospital surrounded by Yeerks, and to acquire his DNA they'd have to be in their normal forms. Alas, Cassie is rather smart, and though she does think it's probably unethical, she does know a way they can get Mr. Hewlett's DNA from his blood. Marco isn't a fan, citing a fear of getting hepatitis or HIV. This book was published in 1998, by the way. But Axe reassures them that you can't get a disease from acquiring someone's DNA from their blood. So Cassie, how do we get it? Cassie explained. All the other humans, even Tobias, said gross. They said gross very loudly and repeatedly. I've learned something from my time with humans. When they say something is gross, they are almost always right. Time to become mosquitoes. Cassie has collected a few of the bugs and they acquire them. Worth noting, they can't all acquire the same mosquito because they don't know which ones are females, and only female mosquitoes drink blood. They fly back to the hospital, and through the window they see that our Secret Service man is still under heavy guard. How about a diversion, Rachel suggested. I go into Elephant Morph, Jake does his Rhinoceros, and we rip that place apart. Sometimes Rachel goes too hard, but you do have to hand it to her. The girl is always there with a solution. Axe counters that an Andalite would make a pretty good distraction, and given that everyone's still convinced that all of them are Andalites, it feels like a pretty good bet. So Axe demorphs in the hospital and first gets noticed by a sick child who thinks he's some kind of strange dream. Axe passes some humans. We know they are humans because they call him a mutated deer and not an Andalite bandit, so that's a win. Oh no, did you see it? Did you see it? It's a monster! I knew they were doing genetic experiments down in the labs. It's some kind of freak. It would have almost been insulting if I was sensitive. Oh, bless. But then, a guard comes out of Aldershot's room, and this guard knows what's up. More guards spill out of the room armed with human guns and Draken beams. Axe is outnumbered, and if they shoot, they could hurt innocent people. There's only one way out. I surrender, I cried. I want to defect. What? I wish to defect. I'm interested in joining the Yeerks. I would like to become a controller. Do you have any information on membership? Is there a fee? That buys enough time for the human security guards at the hospital to show up and wonder what's going on. In order to avoid being caught with an Andalite, the guards drag Axe into the hospital room. Now the hospital room is small and there are fewer guards there, so Axe is less outnumbered. He uses his tail. It's super effective and it allows him to smash through the window. The controllers have other things on their mind and the window is open. All would have gone well if Axe hadn't got stuck in the bush he landed in and is now being shot at by the guards. Axe needs to get small to avoid the bullets, and bingo, he has just acquired that rather small morph. I was shrinking rapidly, and now there were sirens wailing at a distance, coming closer. Police, I heard a human voice cry from above. We can't get arrested. If we let the Andalite escape, we'll get worse than arrested. Keep shooting. Interesting that the Yeerks have not yet commandeered all of the law enforcement. And now, a nice insight into the mosquito mind. Blood. That was my goal. That was my hunger. Blood! Axe manages to follow that instinct all the way to Aldershot. The man, not the place. And here he's quite happily delving into the man's blood when... pop. Axe is no longer a mosquito tapping that guy's veins. He's in zero space. In zero space, Axe is back in his Andalite body, which has presumably been stored there while he was morphed small. For more morphing mechanics, see the previous videos in this series. So in Z-space, Axe can sort of see the inside of his body at the same time as seeing the outside. He can also see the bodies of the others. Weird, twisted Z-space versions, but they are there. I'm envisioning it as some kind of like experimental cubist dimension, but maybe that's just me. Also, there is an Andalite spaceship traveling through Z-space. So up till now, the thinking has been that when your mass goes into Z-space, it's just sort of there as kind of a lump. But this would suggest that it is not in fact random because they still have Andalite and human bodies. Do you remember a few books ago where they mused on what it would be like to be hit by a spaceship while your body was stored in Z-space? What are the chances of it happening? Aboard the Andalite ship, I cried with all the power I could still muster. Andalite ship, we're trapped in your wake and dying. Help, Andalite ship, help! The Andalites inside are still perceiving things in 3D space. And in a moment of pure sci-fi horror, Axe watches his last heartbeats happen from inside his own body. And then, all All of a sudden, Axe isn't dead. He's on a table that seems to be shaped perfectly for his Andalite form. I turn my stalk eyes, and there, standing beside me, were 3 Andalite warriors. So yeah, it would seem they did hear him, and they rescued him and his friends. Axe explains what happens, and it gets the Andalites quite excited. "You are the extruded mass from a low-mass morph? It's impossible," the doctor cried, his eyes bright with excitement. "I mean, it's not impossible, perhaps, but it's never happened. This will annihilate every existing theory of morph mass displacement. This will be a scientific breakthrough of..." But the captain is less concerned with the science and more concerned about why these aliens have morphing powers. I'd forgotten that that was an Andalite no-no. Sea Rose Law, that's what it's called. And I'd also forgotten that Axe had opted not to mention that it was his brother who did the crime. But with the way that the story he's told pans out, it's very clear that the humans had the morphing powers before they rescued Axe from that underwater bubble. That feels like a long time ago now. What should I say? Should I lie to the captain? It seemed impossible, but I had orders from much higher sources. "I did, sir. I gave them morphing capability." The captain looked at me. "I see you are not a good liar, Aris Aximili." I mean, call it like you see it, it was a pretty sucky lie. So yeah, the Andalites in charge work out that it was probably Elfangor, Axe's brother, who gave the kids the morphing powers. But they agree that that knowledge never leaves that room. These Andalites happen to be loyal to Elfangor, and while they think he did a bad thing, they're maybe willing to accept it may have been for good reasons. So Axe goes to talk to the others and informs us, and them, that we are on an Andalite ship headed for Lyra. And unless the ship scientists can figure something out, it seems like they're stuck there. Because it seems that despite the fact that they foiled the Yik's amazing hammerhead shark Yik plan, the Yiks are just running a full-out attack on Lyra. "So let me get this straight," Rachel said. "Suddenly we're a bazillion miles from home and we're about to get dragged into a serious shooting war where the good guys are outnumbered 3-1? "All yes," I said. "Cool," Rachel said. "What can we do to help?" Oh, and to top all of this off, now that Axe is back among his people, Jake is not his prince anymore. Tobias counters that. Axe isn't just an Andalite anymore, he's something else. I said as gently as I could, "The captain has ordered that until the situation is stable, you must all remain here, in this room. Please do not attempt to move about the ship." In a move that is surely not shady in any way, shape or form, the captain is keeping Axe separate from his friends. So rather than focusing on that, let's instead consider Lyra, a planet made up of water with a very small continent, about 8% of land. To give you some context, Earth is around about 29%. Neither the Yiks nor the Andalites have any real capacity for underwater fighting, so most of the war is happening on that very small continent. And whoever wins that continent basically ends up controlling the planet. In this conversation about war strategy, the Andalite captain manages to leave in a big bit about how the Andalites are best when they fight alone that surely has nothing to do with Axe's friendship with the humans. So all is going well. As well as approaching an active war situation can be, when suddenly they're locked out of the automatic landing system. And it looks like they're going to land behind enemy lines. And well, what happens next? So it would seem that the captain may not have been one of the good guys after all. "Ah, my good Aris," the captain said, holding the shredder on me and taking the technical officer's shredder. "Don't want to take the chance of injuring you. Visser 4 would be very upset if I injured the creatures who have been causing Visser 3 such trouble on Earth. Vissers 3 and 4 are such close friends. Just remain calm. It will all be over in a moment, and you will all be guests of the Yik Empire." What makes this so much worse is that the captain is aware that the humans are humans. Is this the point where that particular secret is revealed? Axe calls out to the humans, and thankfully someone, I assume Cassie, decided that they needed a plan and that they weren't in fact going to stay in the sickbay, and they've been there in Morph the whole time. "Prince Jake, it is absolutely vital that Captain Samalin be stopped." "We can't take him out," Cassie said. "We would demorph too slowly, but I happen to be on the captain and I can definitely distract him." So Cassie, who was a flea by the way, demorphs on the captain's back, during which she kind of becomes a very giant flea, which distracts the captain long enough for Axe to get a good tail swipe in. All around the room, flies and cockroaches no one had noticed began to grow as my human friends demorph. What level of vermin is acceptable for a spaceship? I'm just wondering. The captain gets hit by a weapon called a shredder, which makes him basically disappear, but let's put a pin in that. As the technical officer switches to manual. Alas, too late, as the machine now has engine damage. I saw Harrelin rock back on his hooves at this news. "Humans, remorph, the only way out of here is to be invisible. Aris, you too." "I'm not running away." "Oh yes you are, Aris, Aximili Escaruth Isthil. You and the humans will escape and get word of this evil to the commander. That is an order." And to think I thought this would be a happy little book about becoming mosquitoes. Time to more fly and go out the escape hatch. "To all warriors and crew of the Escarlin, this is the tactical officer. The captain is dead. We are surrounded. No chance of escape. Nothing to do now but inflict the maximum damage on the Yiks. In 3 minutes I will begin firing all ship's weapons. The shredder flashback will cause the ship to explode." He let that sink in for a moment. "Perform the ritual of death, my friends. Thank you for your service to this ship. You die in the service of the people, defending freedom." Well, So, leaving the dying Andalites behind, they fly out of there and try and get as far away as possible from both the exploding ship and the psychic cries of the dying Andalites. Axe finally has time to think, and he reckons that Captain Samelin must have just been a traitor rather than being a controller, because there's no way he would have had access to a Yik pool in space. There's a lot of yelling and processing of emotions, and Jake manages to calm everyone down and just says, we just need to fly as far away from here as possible. They land in no person's land, which was the wording of the book, which pleased me. So they can take a pause, but not a long one, because forces could be there at any moment. Tobias heads up to have a look around, while Jake is in charge of the pep talk. More yelling. Either way we get to this point. I made a mistake trusting Captain Samelin. I made a mistake dismissing all of you. You have kept me alive and befriended me for a long time. All I can say is that none of you knows what it's like to be completely cut off from your own people. One of us does, Tobias says quietly. So that dealt with, ish. Axe determines that the commander of the Andalite army must be okay. He must not be a Yik, because otherwise the battle would already be done with. Force commander Prince Galuit Enelon Escaruth lost his entire family to a Yik raid on an Andalite outpost. His entire family. Wife and 3 children. They died rather than be captured. Their bodies were fed to the Taxons. We can trust Prince Galuit, I sighed. And we probably should trust no one else. On top of that, reaching the Andalite forces isn't as simple as a wave of a white flag. They have an automated defence grid that will fire at anything that gets too close in the air. The answer? Bat morph, apparently. While morphing Bat, Axe contemplates how much easier life would be if he were just a human eating cinnamon buns. Was I selling out to the humans? Jake has said they need to stay out of the conflict, but Cassie points out a group of Taxons approaching a group of wounded Andalites. They're going to be eaten if they don't do anything, and that wears Jake down enough to mount a rescue mission. But before they can do anything, a Yik ground attack fighter blows the whole thing up. Axe watches as Tobias seemingly vanishes into thin air, though he was a little bit distracted by the Taxons at the time. If there were Andalites anywhere nearby, they had been destroyed. In my mind I pictured the tactical display aboard the Ascalin. I could see where we were, and where the forces had been arrayed. We've lost, I whispered. Not sure if anyone even heard me. We've lost. As if to confirm my grim realisation, I saw the engine flares of a dozen or more distant Andalite ships rising from the surface of planet Lyra, rising and running for their lives. So they do what anyone would do in such a situation, demorph and feel sorry for themselves. Probably not the most charitable take, but hey, I have the benefit of knowing we're not even halfway through the series yet. Oh no, we're not even halfway through the series yet. Cassie does some light probing to try and get Axe to think of a new plan, and something clicks for Axe because the Lyrans shouldn't really care what happens to the continent. They have the technology now to lay their eggs under the water. So there's nothing really that important about the continent except for the fact that it's where the Yiks will launch their attack on the underwater place from. If at any time it seems the Yiks may catch us, if it seems like they might take me alive, you must not let them. You must destroy me yourself rather than let them take me. Promise me. What? Why? Because I think I know what is going to happen, and if I'm right, this defeat will become the greatest victory in Andalite history, and that information cannot fall into the hands of the Yiks, no matter the price, no matter what. Well, hot damn, and there's only 30% left of the book. They fly most of the next day, stopping to demorph so they don't hit the time limit, obviously. And as they land at the shore to figure out the next part of the plan, Rachel disappears, much like Tobias did. No Drakenbeam flash, nothing dropped her out of the sky, just vanished. Rather than thinking too hard about this, they decide they need to get out of the view of whatever is vanishing their friends. So they dive under the water and demorph, and then they decide to morph shark based on the pretty sound logic that if the Yiks were going to use sharks to attack Lyra, sharks must be pretty much the baddest things in the ocean. We get a moment of exploration of the Lyran ocean, which is gloriously clear and has all sorts of wonderful fish in it. They spy some Lyrans, who seem very confused by the fact that there are sharks in the water, given that they don't know what sharks are. Lyrans, I yelled. Lyrans, I am an Andalite in morph. The spear flew through the water, only slightly slower than a human bullet. Uh-oh. Yeah, these turn out to be Lyran controllers who want to take the Andalite to Visser 4. These controllers seem a bit confused that the spears didn't kill the sharks, but the sharks are made of stronger stuff than you find in the Lyran ocean. These controllers are about to be shark food when one of them screams from within their brain. The picture that appeared in my head was grisly and awful, but I knew it was real. Prince Jake, bite their heads, bite off the large lobe at the back. Apparently the removal of the large back brain lobe does not hurt the Lyrans. They can regenerate most body parts. Handy. I've experienced some strange events, but 4 bright yellow Lyrans with half their heads removed actually thanking us was definitely one of the strangest. Well, that worked out well. Basically, they've bitten off the bit of the brain that had the Yik in it. So the Lyrans let them know that there are a fair few controllers between them and the Lyran base, and if even one Lyran controller gets away with the secret that they are in fact humans and not Andalites, it's pretty bad for them. So how do we get there? Prince Jake wondered aloud. Morph the Lyrans, I said. Thankfully, these Lyrans are quite happy to consent to having their DNA taken, mostly because it helps them free themselves from the Yeerks, but also because they're aware that the Animorphs, rather than the Yeerks, respect the Lyrans' freedom and they're not going to try and take over. In acquiring the Lyran DNA, Axe realises that the Andalite was wrong. Fighting together doesn't make them weaker, it makes them stronger. What's fun about morphing Lyran is we get a whole new sense that we've never explored before beyond Thought-speak: psychic powers. I could see so clearly that Marco was hoping for some news of his mother, Visser One. He wondered if she was here on Lyra, if she had survived our last encounter. I could see and feel Prince Jake's crushing weight of responsibility, the way he kept running things through in his mind, over and over, trying to figure out what had happened to Tobias and Rachel, desperate to find a way to protect the rest of us. And I could feel Cassie's mind as she cried for Rachel and Tobias, as she wondered whether we were doing the right thing, as she dealt with the after effects of the violence we'd just endured. Well, Marco said, obviously uncomfortable, I would just like you all to know that whatever thoughts of mine you're reading are totally made up. They aren't real. That's 100% how I would react to having my mind read. Just 100% denial. And since they are in morphs and not just permanently Lyrans, it turns out they can turn off the psychic part of their brain, which frankly, I'm pleased with. I don't need to hear Marco's inner dialogue. How will these Earth teenagers comprehend the beauty of an alien underwater city? It looks like a giant Dairy Queen cone, poked full of a million holes. Profound. The Lyrans, who have psychic abilities, obviously know why they're here, which eliminates a lot of the need for explanations. Instead, they just get psychically shown the route they need to follow. It turns out the tower is more like a shell with a bunch of bubbles that each contain kind of water or air depending on the needs of the person in it, so the Andalites can be on the floor and breathe air and stuff. We demorphed. It felt good to be an Andalite again, but I was worried. I was nervous. I had given my word to Prince Jake that he and only he would decide whose orders I should obey. It had seemed easy to make that promise before, but now we were going to see Galluit, the commander. The idea of saying no to him, it made me gasp. Axe goes the whole hog and even tells Galluit that Jake is his prince, which makes everyone very shocked. So as Axe suspected, the reason they needed to leave the land is that they're planning on blowing it up and destroying the Yicks. They've planted quantum bombs all throughout the land which will blow up, destroying the troops. But there is an issue with the bombs. The Asgarlan falling so quickly means the main switch was never armed. Always have a backup switch in case the mutant deer captain turns out to be a traitor with the slugs. Axe tells the prince about the traitor and the events on the Asgarlan. Galluit takes it fairly poorly, but keep calm, carry on, and demand that the human children go and arm the switch for you because they have more morphs than you. But when they turn around to have a chat about whether they're going to do this, it turns out Marco has also vanished. Yay! I'm just kidding. He's been okay recently, but old habits die hard. So they have a chat with Galluit and a science officer who has a theory. I think these humans and this Aris are still caught in residual flux field. It is pulling them back towards zero space. It may even be snapping them all the way back to Earth, but my best guess is that's what's happening. It's sort of an elastic effect. They were stretched through zero space and back into normal space, but a small amount of their mass is still back on Earth. It may be acting like an anchor. Jake summarises this with big Z-space rubber band. He has to explain what a rubber band is, but once he's done that, they're all in agreement that's what's going on. So since they have nothing to lose, the plan is to go and arm the switch. The arming unit is in this kind of big underground bubble that is lit by bioluminescent plants. You can either get to it by tunnelling from the surface or swimming through a river that's probably guarded by Lyran controllers. Also, apparently these snakes that strike at anything passing by, interesting addition. Despite the slight change in the water, fresh water versus salt, it's probably still best to go shark. They know that works against the Lyran controllers. They run into some, as predicted, and chase them onto the riverbank. Those Lyrans have overheard the plan and they run into some Hawkbajir and tell them that there are explosives on the continent. They manage to free the Lyran, but now it's a race to get to the arming device before the Yeerks do. While swimming into that bubble underground, which by the way is called a bright hole, Cassie vanishes. Anyone still keeping count, we now just have Jake and Axe. Axe, there's just the two of us now. We could probably drop the whole Prince thing. He paused, then added, you could just call me the Jake formerly known as Prince. I'll allow it. They demorph, and now it's time to turn back to get through the cave and confuse the snakes with the echolocation. But then everything becomes kind of distorted with the echolocation and the snakes keep biting them and shredding their wings, and it's not great. Axe makes it through, but either Jake is snake food or he's vanished too. Either way, Axe is all alone in the bright hole. Axe is making his way to the arming device when the ceiling falls through because the Yeerks are digging down from above. The Hawkbajir drop down through the hole, breaking their fall with what can only be described as little jetpacks on their feet. Adorable. Axe dashes, managing to dodge the Draken beams, and enters the code to arm the system. With half an hour until it goes off, that's the time that Galluit has set up, Axe knows that the Yeerks will manage to disarm the device before that. Thankfully, there is a built-in communicator on the device, and Axe tells them to just set it off now. I literally saw the Draken beam stop. The beam stopped in mid-air as time froze. I heard a pop, and suddenly I was no longer there. And just like that, Axe is back on Earth in Mosquito Morph. And because there isn't enough peril, he's being swatted. But at least he's being swatted by a non-comatose Mr. Aldershot. The Yicks have no idea what to do with the police turning up, and they don't have any orders for what to do if Mr. Aldershot wakes up, so they just run off. The Animorphs, despite being vanished at different moments, actually all came back at the same time because science. Or at least that's what they figure while debriefing at the mall. I was an Andalite, all alone, far, far from home, far from my own people, except that sometimes your own people are not just the ones who look like you. Sometimes the people who are your own can be very different from you. Can we eat cinnamon buns now? I asked. Cinnamon buns, I'm hungry now. But yeah, that's Animorphs 18. First time in the books that I have read where we visited an alien planet, with the possible exception of the Elemist stuff, which has been very weird all around. I really like the Axe books. I like getting a different perspective. I like not having to deal with Earth teenager stuff. It just makes me happy, and I feel like he sees the world through the way I see the world. Thank you for watching the second instalment in Animorphs April and the 18th instalment in this series as a whole. I'm still going, I'm still here, I'm still coping. Comment below with what morph you would really like to see if you've never read Animorphs before, or which morph you would really like to do if you had Animorph powers. I'm just interested. I have many questions. While you're down there commenting, if you haven't already, please do subscribe. I put out oodles of content, some of it Animorphs related, some of it other books related. You can see some of what I'm talking about here. That's all from me, and I will see you in the next one. It's gonna be some bloopers now. Today we are on Animorphs 18, the discussion. Nope, the decision. I was not aware of the I see you are not a good liar, I'm gonna have to say Axe's name. Force Commander Prince Galuit and Enilon. Oh, this is gonna be hard. That wears Jake down enough to mount a rescue mission.